Welcome back to the Upper Tier Podcast, the football podcast we bring you each and every day on the Dynamo Podcast Network. Head over to YouTube, smash that subscribe and bell notification button. Audio versions of the show are available through Spotify, Podbean, iTunes, wherever you pick up audio versions of the show. Joining me tonight for a very special impromptu episode, I might add. Darren, how we doing, my man?
I'm all good, Niall. All good, brother. Happy Friday night, baby.
Absolutely. We couldn't really let a takeover at Newcastle just go by without doing an episode now, could we?
Not when it gives us the chance to absolutely riddle a load of those cunts in the background.
Absolutely. Where do we begin? So what I said I'd do is, what we do is we take a look at some of the takeovers that have happened in the Premier League era. And our thoughts on them, because none of these takeovers, none of them are really the same. They're all very different, all have very different goals, very different ways in the way that they were structured and all that kind of stuff. And maybe we could go down and maybe assess a few of them on the pathway to Newcastle. And then what I said, we'd have a look at some of the positives and negatives of a takeover, potentially. And then what we do is we throw out some names out there in terms of players that we felt might be available on the market when Newcastle go after Christmas shopping in January, I would imagine.
They're going to hit the January sales with, it's like using your ex's bleeding credit card, isn't it? They're going to go out and absolutely slaughter the thing in January, right?
Absolutely. and they're not getting a discount on anything.
No, it's sham.
It's out of the bag now. This guy has 400 billion. He ain't getting a discount off no one.
Not even in a January sale.
Not a chance. Let's start. I suppose the only place to start in terms of a takeover would be Chelsea. Is that fair?
Well, it's the original, wasn't it?
Yeah, and Abramovich really laid down a marker, and in some respects, he's nearly blamed for opening up what we call a kind of a floodgate in a way for these billionaires to come in and take over clubs. But the Chelsea one is a very different one, really, isn't it? And we know, like, Roman at times gets an awful lot of flack, but I mean, out of the takeovers, I mean, he's been kind of a gem, hasn't he? Really,
he's been a massive success for Chelsea Football Club, if you ask me. You know, looking across at what a lot of the clubs have had to put up with, I think any club that we're talking about tonight would have thanked their lucky stars to have gotten Roman Abramovich. You know, it was scandalous recently when the English wouldn't hook him up with the passport and stuff and the visa. You know, you're just thinking the man has done so much for Chelsea and for the area and the surrounding areas. You know, because they've done a lot of regeneration around Stamford Bridge and with the hotel and the jobs he's created and the infrastructure he'd helped build, you know, and stuff like that. So he's been a very, very good owner. I think Chelsea fans were probably a little bit apprehensive when he took over, but also, you know, a tinge of excitement. But I don't think even in their wildest dreams could they have imagined what was going to come. You know, he's turned Chelsea into a powerhouse in European football, in world football. You know, they attract big players. They play, you know, good football. They've got good managers. They're always competing for trophies. Now, listen, there's negatives to Abramovich, you know, and this kind of the not short-sightedness, but this chopping and changing with the managers and always getting that little kick that gets you onto a trophy, and then, you know, then you squeeze someone else out the door, and then you get someone else in, and you get that kick and it push you to another trophy. So there is negatives, but I think on the whole, you'd have to say he's done a great job for Chelsea Football Club. You know, he really, really has.
He's delivered 18 major trophies in that time, which is absolutely massive.
But I'm sure I don't need to guess, but I imagine in that period of time, there's no other club that's won 18 major trophies. You know, certainly in England.
Yeah, no, you know, they've been the most successful club
since he's been in. Absolutely.
But I also think in terms of a lot of these takeovers come in with an agenda, and the agenda maybe is to moneyball the club up, or to suck dividends out, or to, you know, increase the value of the share to the point where maybe another takeover happens and you double, triple, quadruple your money maybe. But there's always also that agenda there as well, where, as we talk about, a lot of these stadiums are really like enshrined in the culture of the game, the locality, the history of the club, all that kind of stuff. And some of them have come in. I mean, we seen with Arsenal moved from Highbury to the Emirates. And that move was supposed to pave the way for Arsenal to be super successful in terms of, you know, being competitive with the Bayern Munichs and the Barcelonas of this world and all that kind of stuff. And that obviously hasn't panned out. But I think with Roman really has just come in. He has a drive for success. And, you know, I say about these guys, you don't become a billionaire without being extremely driven and extremely, I suppose, cruel, for lack of a better word, in terms of your determination on your pathway to what you want to achieve. And I think that's the reason why he's no problem making those decisions that you speak about in terms of at a managerial level. I mean, we seen it with Lampard. He seen it wasn't working out. It was bye, thank you very much, but bye. It's not working out. Boom, change it. In comes Tuchel, delivers a European Championship, top of the league at the moment. Unlucky in an FA Cup final. You know, pittered out a little bit last season, down to fourth. They probably could have made second or third in reality. But he's been an outstanding owner, hasn't he, really? And if there's a takeover there that's a blueprint for a takeover, he's kind of that blueprint, isn't he?
Yeah, absolutely, you know, absolutely. And I don't think you'll hear many Chelsea fans crib and moan about what he's done for the club, you know. And I think anyone that does really needs to have a look around the league at some of the other owners and you know, not necessarily, you know, worry that they haven't had this or they haven't had that. Just take a look around and look at how some of these millionaires and billionaires have treated football clubs and the lack of respect they've had for the history of the club and stuff. And I don't think Abramovich has done that. You know, I think he's done things in a good sort of a way. And he's tried to keep, you know, certain values that Chelsea may have had beforehand and stuff like that. You know, we can talk about the manager, but I do believe that is also part of his blueprint. Because I think, like you said, he's a very, very clever guy. And I think, you know, there's always that new manager bounce, isn't there? When somebody gets a new job, and there's always that bounce. And if you make that bounce at the right times, you can almost bounce your way to a trophy. Yeah. It's like peaking at the right stage for an athlete in any sort of sport. Yeah. So there is a logical side to that, and there is a very clever and detailed approach to that. It's not necessarily just, you know, you're gone, someone else is coming in. It's done in a way that we can use this to our advantage and to our gain. And I mean, he's done it time and time again, you know, and he wasn't afraid to, you know, obviously himself and Mourinho fell out the first time, and Jose left, and he said, you know what's best for business right now? What can I do right now to make this club better and to have this club competitive again in this league? And he said, you know what, right now, Jose's probably a good fit for us. We went and got him. It didn't necessarily work out the way he thought, but he was able to do it because he's a businessman and he doesn't have maybe that emotional attachment or there's not that emotional decision making. You know what I mean? So I think he's been a super owner for Chelsea. I really, really do. And I think, you're right. If you're looking at all the takeovers that's happened in the Premier League, this is absolutely the blueprint that a lot of the owners should be looking at and saying, this is what we want to do for the club we come into. Yeah. You know, it really is.
And he was also the first owner that came out and told them to stick the Super League, if we remember back to that time as well. So
yeah, that's right. You know, he was,
which was a super move as well. But I suppose when I looked at that decision at that time, we gave him kudos for that. But we have to remember, between himself and Man City, it was kind of slightly easier for them to come out and do that because they weren't as reliant on the finances to come in, because they're kind of self-financed, if you like, you know.
Exactly, yeah.
But still kudos to him, came out and he did that, you know. So I think if we were ranking these, he'd be top of the pile, wouldn't he?
For me, definitely. Absolutely.
Let's move on and look at Man City. Man City is definitely an interesting one insofar as, I mean, Mansour's there, he's the man, worth about 16 billion. Which again, when we look at these, we think this is massive money. Roman, I think, is somewhere in the region of about 12 to 15 billion. You know, these are just astronomical numbers. But the guy who's come into Newcastle is 400 billion nearly. So like he's like all these put together, multiplied by
5.
5, 6, 7, 8, 9, maybe, you know
Yeah,
what I mean? So this
yeah.
this is the magnitude of what we're talking about tonight. But in terms of City, I mean, they've gone in there and, similar to Roman, he's gone in there. He's also made changes at times, brought in Pep, you know, gave the manager full support. He's always provided money for players that come in, rebuild job. They've always bought the best when they could. I mean, you've seen Grealish coming in this year, 100 million wasn't a problem. Boom. They probably would have done the Harry Kane deal if Pep had pushed hard enough for it, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Well, what you're thinking on City?
City again, I think are a very good ownership. City and where they're situated in Manchester wasn't a great spot, and to City and the owners' credit, they've done an awful lot of regeneration around the area in Manchester, around the stadium, around the infrastructure. They've done a lot of work in the community. They and listen, they're Man City, so they're our local rivals. So this isn't something I enjoy saying, but it's also not something that you can kind of turn a blind eye to, especially when someone's doing something the right way. They've done an awful lot of work in Manchester. They really, really have. And I have to say, if we're giving kudos to Abramovich for stepping out of the Super League, we've got to look at City and say the owners have done some fabulous work in Manchester, in the community, in the surrounding areas, and the infrastructure and the regeneration of the place. They've really, really done a fabulous job of that. You look at what they've done with the City Academy, which is now, it's starting to produce players. They're getting players at a younger age. They're bringing them to the academy, and maybe they're not making it to the City first team, but they're still making it to big teams. You look at the boy Angelino now; he's over in Red Bull, in Leipzig. He looks like a good footballer. There's lads like this that are showing up that have been at City the way Chelsea kind of did, where Chelsea utilised that loan system very well as well. We talked about that and kind of give their players a platform to go out and play games away from Chelsea and build a profile that when you're selling them, it adds to their value. So it's very clever, which in turn then means that the club becomes a little more self-sufficient and a little less reliant from that drip from above. Yeah. And I think you've heard Pep talk about it, when he says, oh, Jack Grealish, he only cost us 40 million or 60 million because we got the 40 from, the sales of the players that we sold, and Eric Garcia and whoever else was, and, so it's, City do things in the right way for me, I must say. They back the manager. They've got a good manager in, they've got a good youth setup, but they don't necessarily back their manager to the point where it becomes silly, they've said, listen, we'd like players to come in the door, but we're only going to do things at a certain level. I mean, could City have thrown their hat in the ring and offered more than PSG to get Messi? I certainly believe there could have been, there might have been an argument, but I don't believe Guardiola and I don't believe the City hierarchy wanted that to happen, where you've got this one mega star, where you've got a lot of other stars at a very similar level. And then you've got this just one, you know what I mean? And I think for them, it was a deal that maybe, this is an awful lot to get involved in. And similarly, Ronaldo, obviously it was going to cost big money and stuff like that. Like, again, you talk about the Kane deal. Would they have gotten Kane? Absolutely. Was the money there? Absolutely. But they weren't just going to be silly and throw money at something for the sake of it. They said, we have a level we're going to go to. And if we can't get him at that level, then he doesn't come.
Same as what they did with Maguire. When you signed
right,
Maguire, they panned out at 65 and you guys went to 80.
Right, and you've got to respect the guy for that. Especially a guy who has the money in his pocket.
Yeah,
because it's very easy for it to become a dick measuring competition and going, do you know what, pal? You're 6-incher on the table. There's my fucking 8-incher. But he didn't. He says, do you know what? We see this guy at this kind of value, and that's where we hold him. And if we can get him for that, well and good. But if we can't, I'll keep my money in my pocket. I don't need to spend it.
I'd say they're also being careful as well, based on the investigations that have gone on and the scrutiny there, because we know there was kind of a little bit going on, but they kind of glazed over it a little bit. You know what I mean?
Well, they bought their way out of a Champions League suspension.
Yeah,
they did, and we can't really get around that.
Mm.
And listen, which club in world football wouldn't do that given the opportunity?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure every club has some sort of selective accounting, let's say.
We look at what's going on at Barcelona. When you look at the trading of players with Juventus, with Arthur and Pjanic and stuff like that, that was all done to balance the books and stuff like that. So it's going on all the time. It really, really is. The financial fair play thing, I understand it and I get it, but I just think, and my dad used the 100 meters in the Olympics used to be a big thing in our house. We'd all sit down and watch the 100-meter final, like, Linford Christie and Carl Lewis and Donovan Bailey and
Ben
Frankie
Johnson.
Fredericks and all this, right? But it got to one stage where, you're thinking, which one of these guys is on the gear? And my dad just one day said, why don't they just let them all take the gear and we'll just see who's the fastest on the gear? So just let the boys go and spend what they want to spend.
Yeah.
But it doesn't, you can't always buy success. Stuff still has to, like, look at how much money United have thrown at the post-Ferguson era. And it hasn't relinquished a league title or a European trophy of note. We won a Europa League. We should have been winning it, with our second team, if the truth be known, you know what I mean? So we can't really sing from the top of the hills at that. But let teams go in. We spent big money and we haven't won a league title and we haven't won a Champions League. So money doesn't guarantee you everything on the board. Yes, it'll give you a good set of players. Yes, it'll give you stuff still has to go together on a pitch, and Abramovich, he'll tell you that. That's why he's changed managers so often, to get that cohesion and stuff like that. So I don't know whether the financial fair play, I don't know if it's something I see maybe going on in the future,
I think it has to be there in some guys, because otherwise what happens is, I mean, if you've a guy coming in now like the new Newcastle owner who has nearly 400 billion, I mean, that presents a problem even for the other contenders standing behind me there. You know what I mean? They have a major problem with that now at the moment as well, because let's put it this way. Let's suppose Man City want to buy Erling Haaland next year, for argument's sake. This guy can come in and offer him double and not even flinch. And that's where you have to have some sort of playing field that kind of controls it in some way, that you don't have basically, again, like what we've seen before with Juventus, Barcelona, Real Madrid, where these are the powerhouses that everyone gets sucked in there. And it's nearly, it creates an advantage basically in the football, in the playing field. You know what I mean?
It does, I suppose. And, for me, and I've said this before, this is where I see the use of like the salary cap. You're, as a team, you have X amount of money to spend. Every team in the league gets the same amount of money. Yeah. If you're Burnley or if you're United or if you're Newcastle or if you're Liverpool, your salary cap is X. So you have, I don't know, let's say you've got 20 first team players, not counting the players that you bring up through your youth system. They can be external to your salary cap, which then promotes the use of your academy and stuff like that and your youth. So you're promoting that because you're freeing up space by using homegrown players. And to do that, you may end up having one or two bigger superstars. But once they fall underneath that salary cap, let it roll. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think we discussed it before, though, didn't we? Salary caps, and I think the difficulty with that is when you start creating then a bonus structure, and then the bonus structures can be edited in any way and very difficult to control across a number of teams. You know what I mean? Because what happens if you?
Well, it's certainly one of the, if you say, oh well, if you win a Premier League, we'll give you 10 million a man. There's, what I mean? There's.
But I'm talking even bigger. Let's suppose we're talking Messi here, or Erling Haaland, or Kylian Mbappe, and we're talking, let's say there's a salary cap in there, and that's what it operates at. But the bonus structures kind of filter down through the accounts in a very different way. They're nearly like a marketing thing. You know what I mean? And it just gets lost in the wash in terms of stuff that you can provide to a player that's very difficult to track or account for, you know, in terms of a real valuations of that. Like, let's suppose Kylian Mbappe went to Newcastle, for argument's sake, and they bring him in and they go, right, we're going to pay you X amount, and that's what we're going to pay a salary cap, whatever it is. But what happens is, if you deliver a Premier League or you deliver a Champions League, there's a £200 million yacht sitting in a bay somewhere in Saudi Arabia and it has your name on it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
I mean, listen, here's the thing. You can't stop that at the minute though either. You know, so there's no, so whether you have a cap or you don't have a cap, that bonus structure or that offside payment or that offshoot, you know, that's still always going to be under the counter. Like, I know lads that we're traveling from the north side of Dublin to the south side of Dublin to play amateur football, and we're being met once a month in a car park by a bloke with a brown envelope. So that's happening in Sunday league stuff.
Yeah, it happens.
Do you know?
Yeah,
everywhere. So to get rid of that is, again, it's like, you know, it is financial doping, but it's also like, you know what? Let's just let them all take the fucking gear and see who's the fastest. And you know, and
yeah,
I think there's something to be said for it.
Except I suppose the problem that you have is if you want the game to be played in the area of respect and fair play and all that kind of stuff, you know, let's take the argument of the gear for argument's sake. The gear that they take at Newcastle would be very different gear to the gear that they take at Burnley. You know what I mean? And
no. I'm not sorry. I'm not necessarily saying the boys should be juiced up to the eyeballs.
No, but you know, as your example, I'm just saying that I'm not saying anyone's juicing at all. I'm just saying if you're trying to create that playing field, there's no doubt. Like if you think about it in the Tour de France, that's a good example with Lance Armstrong. We found out after the fact, okay, this guy had it down to a T, but we found out after the fact that either the top 25 or the top 30 riders in the Tour de France, they were all juicing. It was found out they all went back and retested and stuff like that, and most of them got caught, if not all of them. So technically speaking, the best rider in the race won the race, you know?
Yeah.
But
exactly.
My argument to that would be, was his protocol the same as the other 29's protocol? And I would doubt that's the case at all, because he was the money man in there making absolutely astronomical money. And I'm sure he had the best of the best in terms of what could happen. Now, if you lay that out then in terms of money and in terms of training facilities and all that kind of stuff, like you can imagine this guy coming into Newcastle now, if he puts together in there a training facility that's like, you know, like it's the Rocky situation where Rocky was running the snow on the mountains in Russia and Drago was in the training facility. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now, I know Rocky won the fight, but I mean, when you compare Drago and you compare Rocky, which is, you know what I mean, in terms of the different facilities and stuff like that, if he puts in one of these world-class facilities that has the best of everything in it, he's already at an advantage. If some of these teams are, you know, training down on the beach in the rain.
It is, but you know what? Here's the other thing. He's also got to be clever enough to do that, because, you know, there might be a guy who says, you know what, I'm going to go and I'm going to pour money down the drain on players and on wages and on this and that. Whereas a guy who decides, you know what, I'm going to go and build a really nice training base, I'm going to make everything comfortable. Like, tactically, that's a better decision. So that's also, again, that's not necessarily attached to the money element of it. Anybody that comes to take over a club, the first thing they should be doing is, let's go and see where these lads train. Let's go and see what the conditions are like. Let's see what we can do to make it better, so we can make these guys as comfortable as possible. And, you know, you see now, like, there's
and attracting
all
the top guys,
and attracting, but all the different jobs, even all the different jobs that are even attached to clubs these days. You know, the player liaison officers, which is, and some of the, I know a guy who was doing player liaison at a Premier League club, and I says, what do you do? You know, and he says, well, such and such rang me the other day to tell me his dishwasher was broken. So he said, I had to get somebody over to the house to fix his dishwasher, because he's French and he didn't know who to call. You know, he didn't know to get a plumber and blah. His missus just wanted to use the dishwasher. And I said, so he gave you a buzz? And he says, yeah, give me a buzz. I said, listen, need you to do such and such. He says, and I did it. He says, because it's my job. He says, and still your man's thanking me and trying to buy me dinners and give me shoes and do this and that. And he said, he says, this is the way these guys are pampered, and you know, to the extent. But he said, like, all of this has been driven by owners and by boards to try and create this perfect storm where where you get the players into that exact kind of position that you want them in, where you get every last square inch and drop out of them on a Saturday, and the ball just rolls like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. Let's go back and look at a couple of others then. Let's look at Arsenal. Kroenke came in and pushed through. He had shares in Arsenal since 2007, but he always kind of tried to constantly up his stake in the club and stuff like that, and he was driven that he wanted the ownership. And he pulled it off in 2018. He pulled off a 600 million deal. I think it was Usmanov. Is that the name of the guy who he took out?
Elisha Usmanov, yeah, that's right.
He took him out. And that seemed at the time, if I'm right, was a little bit hostile.
Yeah, there was a little bit of hostility, all right. Yeah, absolutely.
He was trying to push him for a while, wasn't he?
He was. There seemed to be shares on the table. And it seemed to be the lads were almost trading in shares. Somebody picked up a piece of share, somebody picked up a piece, and there was two lads were basically going, to sit at the top of this table. And it did fall on Kroenke's side, as opposed to Usmanov. But yeah, it was hostile, and there was, I'd say probably wasn't very comfortable for Arsenal at that stage, where you have these two kind of billionaires that are, trading in stocks and shares on the club, and what side of the fence do you fall on? Because if you fall on the wrong side of the fence and somebody else wins the race, you know what I mean. So you couldn't be attaching your flag to the mast too early there either. Yeah, especially as a CEO or anything like that.
I'd say based on Wenger's contract and what we know about it, he was very comfortable. Either way.
Oh yeah, for Arsene, yeah, but I mean even the hierarchy of the club, like if you get too friendly with Usmanov and Kroenke sees it, and he wins the race all of a sudden, he was friends with your man, that's your gonzo as well, and it's...
So it's fair to say that takeover really hasn't delivered yet. I mean, we had Emery coming in, we had Wenger there. We hear from the fan base that they want the Kroenkes gone, and sometimes you think, careful what you wish for, because you never know what you might get, kind of thing. Absolutely. But also we know that there's issues there, that they're letting the stadium go a little bit. Lads have been reporting going to matches where there's paint falling off the stadium and the certain signs aren't even filled in and all sorts of stuff. Potentially broken bits of seat and all this kind of thing. Stuff just doesn't get repaired. And that's normally a bad sign.
It is. Here's what I'm going to say on the Arsenal thing. You say he hasn't delivered, and from a trophy and a winning point of view, I'd agree with you. Delivering a stadium like that isn't easy. And I do believe Kroenke played his part in that. And I think Wenger also played a massive part in that. He kind of had to knuckle down and go through a few windows and sell a few players, and, they had to balance books and stuff like that. So, and the stadium, there was a lot of money getting poured into the stadium and stuff.
And continue to deliver top four.
And continue to deliver on what was the kind of bare minimum for him to get by and stuff like that. Yeah. And there's always been money put into the playing squad, maybe not as much as the fans would like at times. But I mean, here's my big issue with Arsenal. And I've said this for quite a while. Strategy and structure and buying a profile of sort of player. Arsenal just don't seem to know. I'd love to know who makes the deals at Arsenal. We know Edu has a big part in it. But we also can't talk about the pre-Edu, who was making decisions then and who was making signs, because you look at the Arsenal squad and it's still very unbalanced. It's top heavy in certain parts and it's very light in other parts, and you just think surely there was a strategy here. Yeah. So I mean, certain blame, like if Kroenke puts someone, and that's where I'd say maybe, and I don't want to I'm not just trying to say, he's a Yankee, doesn't know anything about soccer, but that's where I feel like there's maybe a bit of a detachment with some of the owners and with how football runs. Like, I wholeheartedly believe that there's Arsenal fans out there that could have ran that club better than the people that were in the positions. You know what I mean? If that makes sense, because they're footballing people. And they know stuff about football, and we talk about it all the time. You have a passion for your club. How many times have Arsenal gone down the road and let's talk to our supporters, because they're very vocal, these Arsenal supporters. We see this Arsenal TV all the time and they're very, very vocal. like what's the talk being and what's the communication being like between the owners and between them to say, well, listen, you know, we understand you've got issues with what's going on, but tell us what you think might work. Give us a push down the right avenue, maybe. Do you know what I mean?
Well,
You're not necessarily...
That forum has never happened.
Do you know what I mean?
You could say that at Arsenal, it's never happened. And the thing about it is, you look at Arsenal as well, and they tend to go into a transfer window. And me and you and any other neutral or fan can look from the outside in and go, well, we think you need a central defender. We think you need a midfielder. We think you might need backup up front or whatever it is. And then they go into the transfer window and they buy something else.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like,
and that's completely my point. From a strategy and a structural point of view, I think that's where the failings are at Arsenal. I don't necessarily, I personally, even as a neutral or as a United fan, I wouldn't look at the owner there and say he's a really bad owner. You know, I know Arsenal fans might say that because, again, football fans are very, very fickle, and we look at the end of the day at this shiny trophy and did we win it? And if we didn't win it, you know, it's very easy for us to say, well, we didn't win it. He's in A, B, or C. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Whereas if they had delivered a trophy with what he had spent, would you hear other clubs then saying, yeah, but sure, they spent a lot of money. Do you know what I mean? So it swings and roundabouts in that sense. I hear it all the time with United. You know, Glazer's out, yeah, they're penny pinching. We spent £1 billion since Fergie left the club on players. There's nobody in England has spent what we've spent since Alex Ferguson left. But we spent the money badly. Like you can't get away from that. Do you know what I mean? We spent the money really badly. I heard it described once at United, and it was a really simple but apt, the way they put it. And someone said, you keep buying the cherries for the top of the cake, but the cake's not there. Do you know?
Yeah.
We're buying guys like Angel Di Maria. That's the type of player you add into a squad after you've got 3 or 4 solid centre backs, a good goalkeeper, a ball playing midfielder, a couple of, do you know what I mean? A goal scorer, all of this. And we were buying players, and we've done it to a little bit of an extent this year as well. You know, and we definitely did it with Donny van de Beek. You know, somebody decided, be it owners or be it Ed Woodward, this kid will put a smile on the fans' faces, and it'll make them think that we're doing A, B, and C, you know. And you bring him in, the kid's hardly had a kick. Because he obviously wasn't in the manager's plans, or the manager obviously said, this kid's no use to me, or he's not going to fit into the squad I have, the team I want to play and stuff like that.
Or because he wasn't my idea, I'm not having.
Or because he wasn't my idea, I'm not having any of it.
Yeah, like as if the club went behind your back on it type of thing.
Do you know? But even like this year, you see them, they bring, now listen, we spoke about Ronaldo, it's a no-brainer. You know, you look at the numbers they did with the jerseys and things like that, and even in the stocks, the United stock rose 8%, I think, when we signed Ronaldo, which was to the tune of 250 million. Yeah. So that's a no-brainer. But I mean, Jadon Sancho is done to appease the fans as well. Yes, he's a missing part of the puzzle, but was he missing more than at that stage the centre-back we needed, or now the centre midfielder that we needed, or possibly the goalkeeper that we needed, or do you know what I mean? So there was always something else on the list at United as well that maybe we could have gone for, but our guys see it as keep putting the cherry in, you know. So they've been doing that for a while, and I feel like that's what they've done at Arsenal at times. They've tried to bring in what they thought the fans wanted rather than what the team needed. You know,
there's parallels really between yourselves and Arsenal, isn't there? Really,
there are, absolutely.
We'll move on to United anyway, because I know it's close to your heart and stuff like that, and I'm sure you have strong views on it. I suppose in terms of the takeover there, the biggest gripe that the fan base have in terms of that takeover is the fact that it was carried out based on debt, and they put you in debt up to the gillies. And what they're saying at the moment is the argument that they're saying, I mean, they sold a load of shares again the other day, as far as I know. Something like
that's right.
200 million quid's worth or something like that.
I actually think it was 8% if I read right as well, which was what they had risen. So I don't know if there was a correlation there between what the price that the stock had risen and then the amount of stock they released.
So they cashed cashed in on the bump.
Possibly.
Yeah. Which for businessman is a very clever thing to do.
Listen, here's the thing. Would you have done it?
100%.
And so would I. Yeah. So would I. So who are we to, to cast out over these lads and say, you know what, you guys are greedy. Because don't forget, everyone sitting at home here would do the same thing.
Yeah.
And if you're telling me you're not, you're a fucking liar. You know?
How does it match in terms of the fan base when you look at it in terms of what they're saying at the moment is they have a debt there that's trickling down or sort of growing at the moment, I think a little bit, isn't it, as we speak?
Yeah.
But they see these guys taking money out of the club, and in some respects, I won't say not put money in, but it looks as if they come across as being extremely greedy, even though you'll come back and tell me, well, look, since the Fergie era, they've spent $1 billion or more at this stage, probably with what came in this year. It's probably over $1 billion at this stage.
Probably it's over $1 billion they've spent on players, on wages, on paying off managers who they thought would get us trophies and that didn't. And like, I don't necessarily see any of the managers and think that they were really bad choices. I just think maybe they didn't work for whatever reason. You know, you look at the Moyes thing, Ferguson obviously had a bit of input there. He said this could be a guy that could work. He done absolute wonders with Everton. And, you know, United fans, I think, were thinking this could work. Now, obviously, Pep was on a sabbatical at that stage, if I'm right.
Yeah.
There was supposedly a meeting and stuff like that with Ferguson. And, you know, who knows what could have happened. Would things be different had we got Pep? Maybe. Again, we never know. But Moyes wasn't certainly, you know, we weren't scraping the barrel with David Moyes. There was a bit of thought process went in there. I think they made a big mistake in thinking we can replace like for like. You know, we can get him to come in and play the Fergie role. He's a Scotsman. He, you know, he plays the game a certain way. He, you know, and I think there was a little bit of naivety there around that.
I think the squad and the fan base never really bought into.
No, and I mean, no, they definitely didn't. They absolutely didn't. I think for maybe the squad, he wasn't the name that they expected, you know. And I think, you know, you hear all these stories about how he went into Old Trafford and he was showing Nemanja Vidic and Rio Ferdinand videos of Phil Jagielka, you know, and that was enough for the boys to go, it's this bloke taking the piss out of us, do you know what I mean? Yeah. But again, and here's the thing, and you've got to, and this takes a certain kind of person, right? We can all learn off people, right? So there might have been something from that video that Vidic could have learned. There might have been something that Ferdinand could have looked at that video and learned. Moyes wasn't necessarily saying, you know, you guys need to be Phil Jagielka. I would be shocked if that was the case. Yeah. But what he might have said was, this is how I like him to play. Yeah. This is the position I like him to play. It just so happened the last person he had in a job was Phil Jagielka, and he got him to play that certain kind of way. Yeah. So he goes, this is the way I want, you know what I mean? The United fans will, you know, they'll turn it around and they say, no, we hadn't got a clue. He was a cockwobble. He was this, he was that, you know. He's proven again what he is at West Ham. He's a top manager. You know, he really, really is. He did it with Everton and he did it with West Ham. And I've said for a long, long time, I've said it on this podcast, I've said it on other podcasts, I feel he was hard won by United. You know, I think given time, we'd have seen something different, but he wasn't given that time. You know, and I think the big problem was he wasn't given the time to overhaul the squad the way it needed to be overhauled. The squad was in a very poor state, United. Very poor. Fergie knew when he was getting out because he had stopped buying players for 2 or 3 years' time. He bought Van Persie, which was for now, for the immediate. And if you look at how many times he did that at United, it's very few. He bought very few players that were for the immediate. He bought the likes of Everett and Vidic, and it took them 18 months nearly to get into the squad and into the team. But they were players that he used then for 4 or 5 years afterwards. So he was clever like that. But Van Persie was one of the very few that he brought in to make an impact, you know, straight away. Yeah. So he had stopped building because he knew he was getting out of there. And he said, you know what, I can be selfish here.
Plus the success of the academy had dried up a lot, hadn't it?
Had, yeah. Again, possibly due to Ferguson maybe taking his eye off the ball a little bit. Because I'm out of here soon enough, so I'll let whoever's coming in the back door deal with it. Because it doesn't bother me. And I take no pleasure in saying that because, you know, the man's a genius in my eyes. I'd argue with anyone that he's the greatest manager to ever walk the earth, but that doesn't mean that guys don't have shortfalls in certain areas. So you can't just put the rose tinted glasses on and say, well, everything he did was always right. Everything Fergie did was right, because it wasn't. We know he made mistakes, but we know everyone does. So there's no getting away from that. Yeah, like I don't know. I suppose United fans are very, very vocal about the Glazers. We've spoken about it before in the past about this, and I don't know any businessman that would invest their money into a business and not expect some sort of return. Yeah. We spoke about this, anyone that listens to us knows we've spoken about this before. You're a business owner, I'm a business owner. If you told me in the morning I was going to make 10%, I tell you, you're all right, I'm staying in bed. Yeah. And right, and that's not being blasé, or that's not being, arsey about it. That's just the truth. Like 10% for me, I might as well not bother at that stage. But and this is where you think, at United they were taking, to be safe, I think we've talked about 4 something percent was being taken, and fans were, 4 something percent because it's such a big chunk of money. Well, this is how much has been taken out of the club. But when you see the value of the club and you see it's 4%, you realise any man in the world wants more than 4% out of an investment. If I sat in front of 5 Dragons and said, listen, lads, you guys can have 4%, and I want X, Y, and Z. See you, pal. Don't let the door hit you on the way out. Yeah. So we've got to stop this. United fans need to stop this. This kind of pity me, and we're being wronged by our owners, because we're not being wronged by our owners. Look at the squad we have. Look at the squad they've assembled. Look at the Aon training complex. Look at the type of care and the way our players are looked after. Our players are looked after just as well as any of the top clubs in the world, if not better. They have everything at their disposal. So we haven't got anything to gripe about.
I suppose the only two things that stick out is, one, that we know the ground needs work done on.
Ground does need a little bit of work, yeah, that's right. And I think that's something that since the fans decided that, or since the fans made sure it needed extra work, let's say, after the Liverpool game last year, or the proposed Liverpool game, the club have said they look at the stadium and they look at making a few changes. I think next season at Old Trafford we have safe standing coming in as well. It hasn't been, they haven't told us where, and I'm a bit dubious about this, because I sit in the second row behind the goal at Stretford End, so I'm kind of thinking, is this going to end up as the terrace? I would say there's a good chance it is, and all of a sudden my 2 seats won't be there anymore. But listen, if that's what happens, so be it. You know what I mean? It's not a big loss to me. SC, I'd be happy enough to be in that Stretford End, whether I'm standing or sitting. We can't stand for most games anyway. And I think, well, you stand for certain periods. You have stewards kind of telling you sit down, and stuff like that. And they do their best, the lads. They really do. It's not an easy job when you've 79,500 hooligans shouting at you. And we all know what it's like when a game kicks off. You just turn into this monster. Like my wife, I come upstairs. She's like, go upstairs and watch the football, will you? You turn into some sort of head case when it's on. And when the hour and a half is over, I walk back down the stairs and life gets back to normal again. But for that hour and a half, we just become lunatics, monsters. Absolute monsters. Like, it's crazy. I
want to briefly, before going on to the Liverpool one, I want to briefly touch on Leicester City. And I mean, obviously there was tragedy there as well. I mean, he was an absolute super owner without a shadow of a doubt. I've never seen owners with such enthusiasm in terms of the joy they were getting out of what was going on at Leicester, and to win that league, and then the tragedy of that helicopter accident, and then the son having to take over the mantle. Leicester's kind of a special case, really, isn't it?
Absolutely. I'm actually just welling up as you're saying here, and I have to be honest, like, there was a little tear roll down my face when they lifted that FA Cup last year. And I think anyone that didn't, you want to have a look inside and see what's missing, because it was for the son to go on and do what his father had started. It was something very, very, very special. I'd kind of just lost my father in January, so I knew what the lad was going through to a certain extent, and if I was able to do something like that I knew my father wanted, I know how much it would do for me. And those Leicester players, they knew what that meant to that lad.
Yeah.
They had him on, they had him lifting that trophy. I don't know if I've ever in my life seen players, and certainly players, as enamored with an owner as the Leicester lads are. They love him.
Yeah.
They genuine, and it's love. It's not he's our owner, we work for him. They love the guy, and you just but that's also got to say an awful lot about the man, and about you can have all the money you want in the world, but you've also got to have an awful lot of respect for people. And I imagine he's so respectful to those players, and I imagine he treats them as his friends as opposed to his employees, and that's why they go to war for him, and that's what they do.
There's a human element to it, isn't there? Isn't that the thing?
Absolutely, and he's a leader. His father was a leader of men, and now he's a leader of men. And those lads, they knew going into that Chelsea game, this is going to be a tough day at the office. But you know what? They went in, they picked up their shovels, they picked up their picks, and they just kept digging until that thing was over, and they were out of there. And they got to lift that trophy for that fella, And it looked like every one of them, and every one of those Leicester players at the end of that game was drained because they hadn't got another ounce to give. But you know what? It all made it worthwhile when they got to say, "Come on down here, lift this trophy."
Yeah. It was a very special moment.
It really was. And we've got to say again, when we're looking at these takeovers and you're talking about owners and stuff like that, Leicester, absolute kudos to the lads. So much respect for them for what they've done for the club, and they've really turned them into a Premier League club with Premier League facilities, Premier League squad, Premier League manager. They really are excellent. Well done, Leicester.
And an owner who, I think he gets football, doesn't he? When we talk about the detachment from some of the American owners and stuff like that at times,
yes,
this is a guy, he's up in the stand and he has a scarf on him, and he's willing the lads on, and he's kicking every ball with them, really, isn't he?
You know what it reminds me of, and it's really strange. It was like he discovered football. It was like he'd never heard of it, and he discovered it someday, and it was like some miracle, and he went, they played this game called football. And he just fell in love with it. Because you've seen, they go to and I've seen it when they go to the stadium before the games, and they've left out stuff for the fans. They've left a scarf on everyone's seat. I've seen them leave, a hot drink and a hot dog or whatever they've left for the fans, because they want the fans to have the experience of being at the game and of being treated the right way. They're just phenomenal owners. They really, really are, And listen, like the United owners, they probably take out a return out of the club. They probably take out a dividend. But because, because they're not this big corporation to speak of, and, and because they do things a lot more respectfully, and because they're, again, they're really, really good people. It's not looked on. But I'm sure they still look at Leicester as a business, and they say, do you know what? We need to do this and we need to do that, and money has to move here. And
Oh yeah, they're still very shrewd in the market in terms of
very shrewd.
They bring in signings, but they're not silly in any way or wasteful. And plus, I suppose on the back of the tragedy as well, it'd be hard to justify. You'd want to be some human being to turn around and give out about an owner taking out a dividend after everything they've gone through as well.
Of course. I suppose it's it's always labelled at the Glazers that they're they take out this big dividend. What do they take out? A 4.5% or whatever, this really massive dividend, massive number because of the size of the club. But as a percentage, you're thinking, I wouldn't get out of bed for it, lads.
I think if you put that money in a deposit account, you'd probably negotiate a better interest rate than 4.5%.
Quite possibly. Yeah.
Let's round it out with Liverpool and obviously John Henry and FSG. This for me is again a slightly different one as well. I mean, they've obviously made a number of mistakes on the way, in terms of the ticket prices, in terms of their treatment of the spirit of Shankly and the Spine Cop and the banners and all the stuff that came out and the European League and, you know, trying to trademark these various different things that would go against sort of the fan base and that type of thing, and a kind of an attachment. But to balance that out, we were standing on the steps of the court and we were about to go out of business, and these guys came in and they rescued us. And I remember that so vividly in my mind that day when that was happening and stuff like that. Like I genuinely thought I was losing my club, you know, that kind of way.
Yeah, and I suppose that's where the emotional kind of side of this comes in. And that's where you've seen your club stand on the steps of a court and you thought, you know what, are we going to survive this? And then it looks like somebody rides in on a white horse to the rescue, and save the day, so to speak. And then there's a change at the club, and all of a sudden then there's money being spent, and there's success coming back to a massive club that have been starved of success for years, you know, in terms of that Premier League trophy. And again, emotionally, that puts an awful lot in the bank for them. But then they really have started to kind of chip away at that, haven't they? Yeah. With over the last maybe 2.5 years. And they really have started to chip away. And, you know, I can see now that there's quite a few Liverpool fans that are kind of turning around and saying, you know, well, yeah, they saved us and yeah, they brought us a league title, but and that's great, and they're the positives, but the negatives are starting to outweigh the positives, you know?
Yeah, I think to a point, I think my biggest problem with them basically is communication. It's just simply communication. There seems to be a detachment there. Like you've seen it even this August with the transfer window. Liverpool all summer was basically linked with every player that was available with a heartbeat.
Yeah.
And in fairness to the club and to the owners, it wasn't driven by the club and the owners. It was more driven by the media and the journalists and stuff like that. Because at no point did we come out and saying, yeah, we're trying to buy this player and go in for it. And you know, and I know clubs don't tend to do that either, unless the deal is more or less done either. But I think there's a lack of communication there where, as fans, we probably don't know what's going on. And because we don't know what's going on, we hedge our bet towards, is there something fuckery going on here? But then you look at it and you go, the redevelopment of Anfield is continuing. You know, they've invested massive money in the new training facility. They've renewed contracts right through the spine of the team. There's a lot of good work that they do there as well. But I don't think they communicate the good work very well, and I don't think they communicate the bad stuff very well. And somewhere in between.
And you know, I'd probably say something slightly different there. I would say that they don't communicate the good stuff very well, but I would say the bad stuff is communicated, but not necessarily by them, it's by the fans.
But this is the problem, isn't it? The problem is
because I mean, what owner in the league turns around and tells their fans, we're not going to sign anyone, don't get your hopes up?
No, but if there's if there's a situation where you come out, take for example this year, for example, massive division in the fan base in terms of FSG in and FSG out, based on, did they support Jurgen Klopp or did they not support Jurgen Klopp? Had Jurgen Klopp got a number of players he wanted to sign and they didn't support them, and blah, 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 and all this. And this just festers through the fan base. Whereas a simple communication to come out and go, right, he wanted Konate, we went and we signed Konate early in the window. And now the goal now is to tie down and renew all these contracts and create that spine in the team that's tied down for the next 3 to 5 years. And obviously we can say with Salah at the moment, they're trying to do what they need to do there. But again, with the Salah situation, because there's a lack of communication, and I don't mean in terms of the detail, but in terms of the lack of communication, we don't know what's going on. We don't know if Mo in like 4 months' time is going to be going talking to clubs. We don't know what's going to happen. So if there was a little bit of dialogue there, now I don't mean you have to give us every single detail. But I mean, dialogue, you know,
here's the other thing. If you don't genuinely know, what can you know, sometimes it's better to say nothing than to put people on high alert and to put people on, you know what I mean? And say, so like if I'm a Liverpool fan, the same way, and I'm going to probably use Pogba at the minute because he's in a similar situation to Salah. you know. And I would say there's less of a deal on the table for Pogba, and not from the United side, from the side of Pogba not saying, I want A, B, and C. I think if Pogba came and said, I want A, B, and C, you could then say yay or nay, or well, we won't give you A, B, and C, but we'll give you A, B, and D. You know what I mean? Whereas Pogba is actually saying, I'm going to do nothing for the minute, and I'm going to sit and wait it out, and I might not talk to you, but I might talk to you, right? So from United's point of view, what do you say there, right? From Liverpool, we're talking about Liverpool here, but from Liverpool's point of view, with Salah, we do know a little more about the Salah situation. We know Salah wants a particular, he values himself at a certain level, and whether that level is right or wrong, that's where he values himself. Now, here's the thing, for Liverpool's point of view, do they come out and say, we're talking to Salah, but unfortunately Mo has, at the minute, has these lofty expectations of where we're going to go with wages, right? And by doing that, you straight away put the Sharks on red alert that there might be blood in the water, for the likes of Madrid and PSG and Man City and whoever, and whereas if you go about it and if you keep, maybe you do keep things under wraps and maybe you go about stuff differently and maybe you're talking to Mo, maybe you're trying to get Mo on side, maybe you're saying, listen, Mo, we really, really value you here at Liverpool Football Club and we think you're a big deal and we'd like to give you a platform to become the Ballon d'Or and, the gaffer here thinks you're a future Liverpool captain and you know what I mean?
Which is all very obvious.
Well, it is, but sometimes people need to hear obvious, especially players.
But that's what I mean. I'm sure those conversations have happened. I'm sure the club values Mo as much as Mo values the club, and the value is driven by the market.
But so then if the club are doing the right thing in this sort of a thing, and if they're doing things the right way, which I would foresee they are, and the only reason I say that is if I look at the amount of deals that have been tied down recently, it wouldn't give me the collywobbles to say, oh, well, Mo's not signing. Do you know? Because you've seen all the guys ahead of him sign. So I won't be shocked or surprised at all when he signs a deal in the next month to 6 weeks. I'll go, I thought he was going to stay. All the other boys stayed. Liverpool did their business quietly with the contracts. There was no hullabaloo. There was no mudslinging. There was no, he wants this, he's not getting it. You know what I mean? So from that point of view, I think sometimes you need to be a little more patient with communication. Now, again, you don't want to fight, is the communication going to be Mo signed a deal? And all of a sudden everyone goes, Mo signed a deal, Jesus, do you know what I mean? Whereas if they come out and said things are coming along nicely, we're hoping to have some news in a few weeks, maybe that might feed into things a little bit better type thing.
Yeah, I think I find with us as fans, sometimes we get the answer before we even get the question. And that's where the problem is. And at that stage, then you look at it. You're looking from the outside in, you're a neutral in this game because you're a United fan. Yeah. What's your assessment of FSG? And not only your assessment of them, but let's suppose your assessment, if you refer it back, say, to the Glaziers with your own club, because they're both American owners, they're both involved in a similar thing. Obviously, FSG is involved in the Boston Red Sox, Glaziers involved in the Buccaneers. Okay, they're two American sports. We've seen the kind of things they've done with both those sporting entities. What's your assessment in terms of your thinking at the moment?
I think they've both got positives and they've both got negatives, I think to kind of create the perfect owner, you'd need to mix and match parts of them and create some sort of a hybrid owner that may or may not be out there. And I do, and I don't like her. I said it earlier, but I don't like harping on about it. I just don't think the Americans get it. I think if we look at it, I think Roman gets it. I think the boy at Leicester gets it. I'm not going to try and butcher his name. I think the lad at City gets it. Actually, because we had Kroenke into the mix, I don't think the Yanks get it. I just don't think they get it.
But is it a case of that, or is it a case that when you look at the tree versus the tree, you've got three that are very self-sufficient wealth-wise, and you've got 3 that are trying to run an actual business. You know what I mean? Like, and that's not to say that City or Chelsea or Leicester isn't a business, but
No,
there's
no,
a
I
different
understand what you're talking about. You're talking about personal wealth and how yeah.
Yeah, I mean, these guys are answerable to a board. They're answerable to, you know what I mean? If you look at Chelsea, Chelsea is answerable to Roman. Now, I know Roman may have a little bit of investment around the place and stuff like that, but in terms of answerable, I mean, the book ends with him. The book ends with the guy at City. The book ends with the guy at Leicester. With these guys, there's a kind of a spider's web of ownership kind of thing into a business. You know what I mean?
And listen, even at United into a stock market, because they've got shareholders where they have to say why X, Y, and Z happened and why, you know. And again, I think that's a good thing at times because it makes people accountable, you know, and they can't just go and be fuckwits all the time. They've got to try and balance the books on the fuckwit side, you know, with the decision making processes and things like that.
It creates a different valuation of money, doesn't it? You have to value money because you can't. These guys can't keep on going into the market and getting wrong. As you said, Roman can hire a manager, and if he gets it wrong, boom, get another one. Now, that's not to say that he's done that, but with these guys, they can't really afford to get it wrong because as they get it wrong, as you've seen, you get United that's out in the cold in terms of success, Arsenal out in the cold in terms of success. You know what I mean? We were out in the cold long enough until we sort of brought in Jurgen and got it right, and we invested in that side of things. We recognized what we needed. We went out and we bought it. We fixed the issues that were there, and it brought success. But it's a different thing when you're answerable that way, isn't it, than if the book doesn't stop with you?
Oh, absolutely it is, you know. It really, really is, because I think accountability is what we're talking about. And you know, when you can just say, well, you know, it's mine, so fuck it, I'll do it whatever way I want. If I'll take my ball, I'll go home if I want it. It's a lot easier than having to say, well, you know what, it's my brother's ball. And if he's losing, I have to go back and tell him he's going to give me the slaps. Do you know what I mean? Like it is different. Of course it is. And it does make running the club different. You know, it definitely does. But I suppose that we shouldn't use that as an excuse either. Because there's been enough, and especially, you know, and from a neutral point of view at Liverpool, to suggest that there is that detachment, you know, where they seem to not necessarily that they don't value the history in Liverpool, but that it doesn't mean to them as much as it means even to football fans, if that makes sense.
It doesn't factor enough into their decision making.
No. And I mean, like, I'm a United fan, and you know, we've Liverpool again are our, you know, our arch rivals, our nemesis, our, you know, whatever you want to call it, our rivals. And but I would respect Liverpool so much because they're our rivals. And I don't like seeing as a United fan when FSG fuck Liverpool over, because I just think, you know, I just think it's too special a club for that. Do you know what I mean? And they're too special a fans for that, and it's too special a city for that. You know, they've been through too much as a fan base and as a city and as a club, the same way United have. And that's why I feel, you know, as rivals like that, but we there is a little bit of symmetry between Liverpool and United, the way we went on runs of winning trophies and the disasters in the clubs and stuff like that. And that's where I would have a massive, massive respect for Liverpool, you know. And they just don't seem to get it. They just don't understand the value of the football fan and of the Liverpool fan and of the city. And do you know what I mean? And that for me is as disappointing as anything. But in that sense, I feel the same about the Glazers, you know. And I feel the same about Kroenke. So it's back to the Yanks, really, isn't it?
I think when you're a Liverpool fan or a Man United fan, there's a baggage you have to carry as being a fan of those clubs, through its history and its tragedy and its success and all that kind of stuff. And that's what I think. I think sometimes these guys are they're either ill-advised or they're advised and they go, fuck it anyway, kind of thing, you know what I mean? And I'm not too sure where that line falls, you know what I mean?
And you know, that's the one thing I'd like to know most, I suppose, is are they ill-advised? Because and if they are ill-advised, you know, because how difficult or how easy should it be to understand that?
I would have loved to be in a
You know?
boardroom. I would have loved to be a fly on the wall in a boardroom when the discussions on the ESL were happening. And what was the
Yeah.
debate and what was the information that fed in? And how did they not see this tidal wave of kickback that was going to come? And their lack of understanding of the league and the history and the club and the community and the culture and all that literally had no value. And the value was, we're going to go to this uncompetitive league and we're going to rinse people of money and it's going to be massive. And yet it was like, well, all these clubs, it's all about competitiveness. It's all about culture. It's all about closeness to the community. And they missed all that. So that's why I would have loved to be in the boardroom to see who was talking up that side of it and going, did they realize this wave was going to happen? You know what I mean? And that's where
it's hard. It would be hard to believe, that they didn't.
Yeah.
Because again, although they may not live in the cities, they walk down the streets or they get out of cars at airports and they have to see people. They have to hear people. They have to know. So suppose I'm probably answering my own question at that stage. I'm like, about which is it? Is it the ill advised or is it that we don't give a fuck? So it must be a little bit closer to the we don't give a fuck, because surely they're going to be even fans and locals and people walking down the road will advise them to a certain degree. And I mean, you don't have to be a genius to listen to the bloke shouting across the road, don't do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I suppose you only have to experience a real good match day at Old Trafford or Anfield to understand what it means to people. You know what
Absolutely.
I mean? And I think that's where I kind of park it. But that was a great discussion in terms of the dynamic of these different takeovers, where it can be good, bad, different, indifferent. Let's move on to the meat of this. The meat of this is obviously the Newcastle takeover. Which is absolutely massive. Owner coming in has absolutely truck loads and lorry loads and factory loads of cash. First of all, your thoughts on it first, because there's a lot of talk that goes around this in terms of sport washing and all that kind of stuff, that you're promoting something here in a positive way to distract people from the negativity of human rights and various other stuff that goes on. And I think we'll actually just live in that world anyway. That's the way it is.
We do, don't we? Here's the thing. And again, we spoke about this after the United episode, after the Liverpool game was cancelled last year. I wouldn't be sitting here wearing my lovely Under Armour t-shirt if I cared what the conditions were, the people that made it in. Do you know what I mean? And that's not necessarily to say I don't give a fiddlers, but I wear the stuff anyway.
Yeah.
So we all know.
You don't want to be a hypocrite.
Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah. It's very unfair for me to say, I'm going to walk around and I'm looking now of 2 pairs of Nikes on the floor. I think one says Taiwan and one says Indonesia. And I can only imagine the conditions they're made in. It didn't stop me when I bought a 3rd pair this morning, so I can't do that in effect, because it just wouldn't feel right, and I prefer to be honest about this, and because I think any fan or anybody listening to the podcast wants us to talk openly and honestly about stuff. They don't want to hear, that sort of plumage and stuff like that. But the human rights issues are there, and they have been there. They will be there. Are you asking me, do Newcastle fans care? I don't believe they care, to a degree.
It's an interesting dynamic, isn't it? Because they were being interviewed yesterday, and obviously we've seen there was absolute hysteria. I'm not sure whether it was hysteria at the new owner coming in or hysteria at the fact that they had gotten rid of Mike Ashley finally.
Yeah.
But I just
I think it was, to be honest with you, I think getting rid of Ashley was huge for the Newcastle fans. I really, really do. But also, tinged with the excitement of, as you said, these lads have so much money, it's scary. And for a long time, Newcastle have been a big club and they haven't really fulfilled their promise, since the days of Keegan and Robson and Shearer and Owen. And I heard it this morning when the when the guy, Keith Downey is his name, he was the reporter that Sky sent up to speak to Amanda Stavely, who was kind of fronting this, you know. Yeah. And she said, "Hi, Keith, how are you?" You know, blah, blah, blah. And they got talking, and he said, "You know, Newcastle aren't a club that don't know about breaking transfer records." He said they broke the world transfer record for Alan Shearer. You know, and they broke another transfer record, he said, for Mike Malone. He said, so these are a club that have had history of this. And do you plan on bringing this back? And she didn't say yes and she didn't say no, but she was trying to play things down a little bit. But as a Newcastle fan, you've got to be thinking, we broke records before and she's not shooting this down out of the water, that this isn't going to happen again. This could be huge for Newcastle. We expect it to be huge for Newcastle, you know?
Yeah, well, I think listening to some, I mean, one point I'd like to make, first of all, there was a section of the fan base yesterday that were kind of, I think they probably wanted Ashley gone, but they were kind of disgusted a little bit at the new ownership in terms of a couple of guys were coming out being interviewed and saying, I'm never setting foot in St. James's Park again and I'll never buy a jersey again and this kind of thing. In terms of thinking in terms of the sport washing and the human rights and stuff like that. And that's fine if that's your opinion.
Listen, and I'm not taking those people's character, by the way, you know, but all I'm gonna say is, and again, you know, I'm talking like, let's say 18 months down the road, yeah, and Newcastle have 10, 12 new players in the squad. They have a new manager. They're playing good football. They're involved in a top 4 battle, even, let's say, in 18 months' time, yeah.
They're third in the league, 3 points off top, yeah.
Right. And little Bobby there that popped out of the stadium yesterday and says, well, I'm not going back. Yeah. Does he get washed up in the emotion of, do you know what, Newcastle could win the title here? Because if he's a football fan, and if he's an honest football fan, he does.
Yeah.
And he goes, I'm getting a fucking ticket for that Gallagher end. And I'm going to be there when my boys in the black and white lift the fucking trophy, right? So it's all well and good, you know, putting up the
pump.
Do you know what I mean? Yeah, blowing hot air up your own arse. You know what? I'm a good person. I don't need these guys. Come to me in 18 months. Come to me in 2 years. If you haven't set foot in the stadium, I'll tip me hat to you, right? But I mean, it's the same as the keyboard warrior thing. You can say what you want. Is anyone going to pull him up on that? And if they do, will he really give a fiddler's? Not if they're lifting the trophy, he won't.
No. Yeah.
You know, not if he's a fan like we are and he'd do anything to see his club lift the trophy, you know?
Yeah. So how do you see this now? We know this guy's come in absolutely minted to the gills. Different level. I listened to some Saudi guys yesterday talking about this, and they talked about the competitive nature within all these different princes and stuff like that. That there's a huge competitive nature there, and we've seen it previously before in terms of horse racing and bloodstock and stuff like that. It's absolutely massive, so there's no doubt it's there. But this guy is different level, isn't he? He's different gravy.
Well, he's certainly different gravy to what we have in the league at the minute. You know, and I mean, like, the money we're talking about is, you know, scary. It's facetious. Of course it is. Absolutely, it's scary, you know. But it's something that the Newcastle fans should certainly get swept away in, and, you know, let them go asleep tonight dreaming of league titles and dreaming of seeing the best footballers on the planet up there in St James's Park.
They've waited long enough. They've waited
absolutely. We spoke this morning when we talked about doing this, you know, and we said, well, we'll do the Newcastle thing tonight and we'll do the takeover and whatever. And when we spoke, I said to you, and I'll say it on air where people can hear, there's no other club in the league other than United I'd have wanted this to happen to, which is Newcastle, you know. Their fan base is phenomenal. Yeah, I do hear people say, you know, obviously we hear Jason Cundy on Talk Sport say there's not a whole lot of Newcastle fans outside of Newcastle. I don't know about that. There's quite a few Newcastle fans floating around Dublin, I have to tell you. And again, they're big Newcastle fans. They're guys that go over every couple of weeks to see their team. They're not like the United and the Liverpool fans that we know that have never set foot in Old Trafford or Anfield. So, you know, we have to be honest about that as well. very respectful, serious fan base, big club. They've broken the world transfer record before. Would I love to see them do it again? Absolutely, I would. And that'll possibly be at the detriment to my club, because we could be the ones that miss out next time.
Yeah.
But you know what? The Newcastle lads they've had to put up with enough for a long time. I couldn't begrudge them. I really couldn't, from one football fan to another. Best of luck with it, lads. Enjoy every minute of it. There's probably going to be a lot of ups. There might be a couple of downs, but strap yourself in tight because it's going to be fun.
Proper roller coaster, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you see in terms of panning out now? I mean, we had a discussion this morning about this on the way into work.
Yeah.
We kind of had varying views on it. My view is that the Hoover Dam is going to get busted open and that it is going to rain signings in January.
Is this just what goes on in the nightclubs in Newcastle at 4 p.m. on a Saturday afternoon, or is this?
I think it'll be 3 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon in St. James's Park. What's your thinking on it?
I do think it'll be a little bit of a slower process than you do. I don't necessarily think they won't get to that level, but I think it will take a little bit of time. Like, I don't think you can go from Joe Linton to Kylian Mbappe. I don't think that happens for me, because I don't think Kylian Mbappe buys into it if he's going in to play alongside Callum Wilson. Do you know? And I don't think financially they can go and make 400 million worth of signings in the next 2 windows, and nobody will look and go, something going wrong there, lads. Do you know what I mean?
Well, Roman Abramovich did 300 million nearly in 2 windows.
Did he do 302 windows?
Well, he did 200 first, didn't he, in the catch-up window, and then 100 million nearly for Lukaku.
Okay, well, yeah, but they're very different stages. Like Lukaku was doing a recent one, and don't forget, that was also after the Hazard money, and it was with Lampard, having to go through 2 windows of the ban and stuff like that. That's different to maybe the 2 windows when he came in. Like when he came in at Chelsea, he bought players, but he didn't buy worldy straight away.
No, but I mean recently, if you look at recently, I mean, he brought in Havertz, he brought in Timo Werner, he brought in Thiago Silva. Then he went out and he brought in Lukaku. I'm sure he brought in 1 or 2 other players as well. Ziyech came in, I think, didn't he? And
but not in the first 2 windows. And that's where I think it'll be a slower process.
No, but I mean, if you look at the Lampard window where he bounced back in after the ban, and then he brought in, I think it was close to, it was 180 million worth of players or something like that. Yeah. Brought in 3 or 4 big signings or whatever it is. Then straight away, Lampard goes out, Tuchel comes in, and you go to another window, and then
but we can explain a lot of that. We can explain a lot of that, as in they had the Hazard money. They had 2 transfer windows where they spent diddly squat.
But on the flip side of this,
they've got one of the, if not the most expensive ticket in the country for a game of football as well.
But we're now talking about a guy who doesn't have to worry about having Hazard money. Who doesn't have to worry about it. No, he doesn't,
but he still has to explain. Like, here's the thing, Chelsea had assets when they spent their money. Newcastle at the minute don't have assets, so to speak. You know what I mean? From that point of view, like, not that they cashed in on their assets, but they had worked themselves into a position where they could spend 300 million and people weren't going to blink. If Newcastle spend 300 million between January and next summer, people are going to ask questions. Do you know what I'm saying?
But those questions can be easily answered, can't they? When you own nearly half a trillion, I mean, those questions
but
can be
it's not supposed to come from personal wealth. So this is, you know what I mean? This is where it's slightly different, Now, as we talked about it earlier, and as you said, we imagine next season they're going to look like Lance Armstrong in the Tour de France. They'll have so many patches and logos on them. There'll be Saudi horse racing, and there'll be Saudi bottled water, and there'll be Saudi this and Saudi that. I imagine we might even see a name change of St. James's Park, to
100%.
Because the naming rights, they can stick so much money on the naming rights.
Yeah.
They'll say, we're going to name that stand, whatever they're going to name it for the next 5 years, and this Saudi business is going to pay us 100 million which will then go off our money, our financial fair play.
They'll be naming individual seats near loan stands.
Possibly.
Yeah, I don't think this guy hasn't gone in there to buy this club to sit in the shadow of these other boys behind me.
No, but
this to me is not a 5-year project.
I think 5 years is a stretch, but I certainly think 3.
Yeah.
I certainly think 3. I just don't. I even, when we spoke about the manager early on, and I wouldn't be shocked to see Eddie Howe from now to the end of the season.
I'd be very shocked.
I wouldn't be, I have to say. Yeah. To see someone like Eddie Howe or somebody, with a little bit of proven Premier League track record and experience, which will get them to the end of the season, which will keep them up, which maybe they invest a little bit in January, but not too much, because we'll keep all our funds for the summer for our new manager who comes in then, and then we start to build from then. Do you know what I mean? Now listen, maybe they go out and maybe they get Conte, right? And maybe they say there's 100 million in January and there's another 300 million in the summer. But if they do, that goes against or should go against, what we want from an owner. Not what we want from them, but from what's tolerated, let's say. Because again, then that money is coming from someone's pocket as opposed to the club and the funds that club generates and stuff like that. Do you know what I mean? There's no doubt that
Newcastle has been generating different funds. They have a massive fan base up there and stuff like that.
They do.
It's just Ashley was wrapping his arms around it like that and putting it into money counters.
Yeah, he was absolutely. But I mean, the other thing about Newcastle is, although it's it's a nice sized stadium, they're not charging big money for tickets, so their match day revenue isn't massive.
That's about to change, I'd imagine.
Well, it will change when what's on the pitch changes. But I mean, they can't go next season and say, listen, you were paying £250 this year, you're paying $450 next year. Because
you can't have Erling Haaland and Kylian Mbappe rock up to
it. If they rock up. But unless you've got something to back that up, what are the fans going to say? Well, you guys, with all this money, bought the club, and all of a sudden we're spending an extra £200 a year to come and see who? Callum Wilson and John Joe Shelby. You're all right, I'm busy, And like you said, if Haaland shows up, if Ronaldo decides I've had enough of Ollie, I'm off up north, and if Kylian Mbappe, if Mo Salah turns around, he says, you know what, I'm mates with them sheikhs up in Newcastle, lads, I'm out here, take it easy, I'd look better in the black and white anyway, maybe. But for now, I think it'll be it'll be softly as they begin. I heard the girls speak, Amanda Staveley. I think the foundations are going to be laid for an academy and for a training facility. I think that's their number one priority now. I don't imagine Bruce will be in charge for the Spurs game. I'd be shocked if he was. I think they'll get somebody in shorter term, maybe till the end of the season on a short-term deal. And then there'll be, when you keep us up, there's a little payment for you. Now toddle off into the sunshine. And we'll get our big name in the summer, and then we'll start to build from there. But I could be wrong, and that's the beauty of opinions in football, because everyone's going to have theirs, and we want people to drop a comment below and let us know what their opinion is as well. Don't forget.
Yeah, I think I have a funny feeling this guy's going to load up the Gatling gun on the back of the Jeep, and he's just going to be like a saint from The Walking Dead. Lads are just going to be dropping like flies. I think he's going to pour it in there. Look at that picture behind me there. Do you think that guy behind me is going to keep on smiling, and this guy on the other side of me here is going to tolerate that? I don't think so. Not a chance.
No, but I just,
as I said to you already, if you're half a trillionaire, imagine that.
Yeah, but I just don't see you being able to, close the gap that quickly. You don't go from, like, if I sit a maths test last week and I get 7% in it, right? I don't sit it next week and get 97. I might get 47.
Yeah, but let's
do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but let's remember, this plan is a year behind. Let's remember this as well.
It is, but I still don't think, again, if they're in it for the long haul, doesn't matter whether it takes a year or 3. Like, I don't think necessarily they would have been, listen, they knew they were going to get this club eventually.
It does if the next door neighbour to you is laughing at you.
No, they're not. I don't believe. I think the lads at City are clever enough to know we don't laugh at this bloke, because if we do, it's kind of, it's like firing a warning shot over the bow. We'll only antagonise this guy, and if you antagonise him into spending, you're really in trouble. But I think it'll be softy to begin with. But I do, I'd say you're probably talking 3 years, but and maybe we'll see them as some sort of a challenger for that top 4.
I'd be surprised if it takes that long.
Do you think by this time next year, by the international break, we're going to be looking at Newcastle in the top 4?
I think they're certainly going to be definitely in around the top 6, and I think the likes of Arsenal and Tottenham are going to be blown out of the water unless they do what needs to be done. But I think with this guy, I think he's been planning this. This was supposed to be in place a year ago, so he's had a plan in place, and he's come back in again with his determination to make this happen. And I don't think this is a guy who suffers fools gladly. And I think he's already probably put the feelers out there. There's a lot of lads, I'd say, out there at the moment in the footballing world that have been lunching in Saudi Arabia with a lot of discussions going on. And I reckon this guy has a plan on the table.
Do you believe they've spoken to the likes of Haaland?
I wouldn't be surprised. I'd like to have a look at the stamps on Mina Rayola's passport. And I'd imagine there's a few Saudi ones on it. I'm just putting that out there without a shadow of a doubt. And, we know what these guys are like. Some of these guys are mercenaries. Do you think Paul Pogba wouldn't fancy a stint in the black and white up north? I think 100% he would if he sold an image that X amount of guys are coming in. We're going to create a world-class training facility. We're going to develop St. James's Park. Newcastle is going to be a force to reckon with. Like, look at how excited Alan Shearer is. He's not getting excited over a 5-year project.
I heard it was just because they were going to stump up for a hair transplant for him.
Maybe they were going to re-sign him.
Little cue ball.
So
anyone that snubs Fergie's a moron anyway. Yeah, I think it'll be slightly different. But either way, whether you're right or whether I'm right, we're gonna enjoy this.
Yeah.
I'm probably living as much now for January to see what Newcastle do as what United do.
I only said to Dame this morning, I can't wait for the transfer show to kick back in. It's going to be electric.
They're going to be linked with every tumbleweed that blows down the motorway. Yeah. And they listen. Where do you go? Who becomes the first? Who's the first one? Who's the first mercenary who decides I'm off to Newcastle for the big bucks, boys? See us later.
Well, it's not unusual for a club like Newcastle to announce 3 signings at once either.
Jeez, we're really taking out the Mystic Meg ball, aren't we?
I assembled a bit of a list today. I'll run you through my list today of players that I feel are kind of available without being silly. Okay.
Right. So you give me the name and I'll give you a yay or a nay. How about that?
So Philippe Coutinho.
Yay.
Ter Stegen.
Yay.
Lautaro Martinez.
Yay.
Sterling. 100%.
Yay.
100%.
Yeah.
He would be the first one I could see going in January.
Yay.
Lingard.
They won't want them.
Eden Hazard.
Nay.
Skriniar.
Yay.
And Frank Kessie.
I hope not, because I want them at United.
Yeah. And I haven't even mentioned Mbappe, and I haven't even mentioned Erling Haaland. So they're a kind of a selection of players I was looking at that I think with the right deal and the right offer would jump the gate straight away.
Yeah, listen, like I think you could even add to them.
Yeah.
I think you could add to them. I don't think you'd even need to think too hard. Kingsley Coman.
Yeah.
Potentially
Paul Pogba.
If Mo doesn't sign a deal.
Yeah.
You can cherry pick the best player from every team in the league if you want. You know, you can go to Burnley and go, who's our best player? Nick Pope. Let's take him. You know, you can go to Spurs. Son, he's our best player. We'll take him. You know,
Kane.
Can they sell it to Kane?
100%.
Do you come in after Alan Shearer and Michael Owen and become the third in the trilogy of English number 9s to go to Newcastle?
Isn't it mad the way we're talking like this and we're both getting so excited? And this is directly going to have an impact on both our clubs. Isn't
I think it shows how fucking stupid we are.
As I say to people, stick to our Spotify.
You know what I mean? Well, well, listen, it's worrying, or it should be.
Yeah.
You know, if Frank Kessie has come to the Premier League, I want him to be coming to the United jersey. Now, here's the other thing, and we've seen this from...
Actually, I forgot one as well, Van de Beek.
Donny could head up there.
100%.
Donny could head up there, absolutely. But here's the other thing, and we know this to be true from all the other takeovers. You can't buy them all. And you tend to not buy them all. You know what I mean? Like, they can only have a squad of 25? You know, in and around, let's say. They're not going to have 50 world-class players. So that's not feasible. I would say come January, you're looking at a lot of, I would say that the moves Newcastle are going to make will be in the 20 to 30 million bracket, you know, because I think that's a level they can go in and be comfortable at. Listen, if they turn around and said to United tomorrow, there's 35 million for Donny, would we take it? If we didn't, we'd be really fucking stupid, you know? If they're looking for a right back, for a left back, you're getting good footballers for that kind of money, for that 20 to 30 million. You know, you might go and get yourself a Kieran Trippier from Atletico Madrid for 25 million. You know what I mean?
You're probably creating a headache for yourself though down the line, are you? Because you're going to have to move those guys on, because those guys are not going to deliver silverware.
Well, that's my point, because I feel like your first squad get you top 4, you know, and after you've got top 4, and after you're playing Champions League football, you're building a slightly different squad anyway, because you're building a different profile.
But if you bring in 5, let's say, if you brought in 5 30 to 40 million pound players, that's not going to deliver you a top 4 up there. Not a chance.
Not when we look at the market right now. Okay, so let's say they spend 300 million the next 2 windows, yeah, on 10 30 million pound players, and they've a manager who tactically has something going for them, right? Yeah, they're in the mix.
I don't think so. I think 30, with the way the market's gone, as sickening as it sounds, I think 30 million now only buys your bang average. I don't think that's, you know, I don't think that. Tell me a player out there in the market at the moment for 30 million that will go up to Newcastle and bring them up a level. Now I know you need a few, but give me one. Okay, well, here's what I'm going to ask you. Am I buying for 30 and they make an immediate impact, or am I paying, 30 for a Wesley Fofana that's going to, do you know what I mean? Because that's sort of different. I could tell you someone for 30 million, but you may not have heard of them. And do you know what I mean? And they may not have the profile where we immediately go, that'll make the difference. But that's you know what I mean? But that's less and less the case these days, isn't it, with the way these boys do their homework? I mean, you look at Rodgers at Leicester, say. Take Rodgers at Leicester, right? Right. You know about Wesley Fofana, and we know he's an exceptional player and stuff like that. Very unlucky with the injury, stuff like that. Yeah. But he hasn't gone out and bought Patson Daka on the basis that he's unknown. You know what I mean? He didn't. No, he's not unknown, but that's my point. He's at a level where he's still comfortable paying. What do they pay for him? 25? I think they paid something around that, maybe a little bit more. I think it might have been 30 or 35. I think, but even so, they're paying that at a time where they kind of got away with a little one there because most other people interested in them pulled out. And it was really a Leicester deal that was left.
I still think there's players to be had for a reason. Like, all right, what's Jeremy Doku cost you?
I think when you're really going for him and you look at the deal, he's going to cost decent money. Depending on how he goes this season.
I don't think he cost you more than 30 at the minute.
I think depending on the season he has this year, there's no way you're getting him for that.
Well, if he scores 25 goals and has 10 assists, it's different. But if we go in January to buy him now, what are you paying? I see you paying somewhere between 25 and 35 million euros. Yeah. Right? So there's a player straight away that makes a difference at that level.
But my argument to you then is, are you going to find 10 of them?
I think there's enough of them. There's the boy last night that come on for. I'm gonna butcher this kid's name. Chunamini, I think his name was. He came on for France in the second half, almost scored a screamer, and really, really highly thought of defensive midfielder. There's a lot of clubs looking at him because he's not old enough. You're still bringing a little bit of promise or of a prospect rather than the finished article. 30, 35 million, I think takes them all day long. And again, you head him in with a Doku, you put him in with a couple of other boys here and there. All of a sudden, and again, the big thing for me is, and I've said this because I've also mentioned it when we talk about Liverpool, my biggest fear is that Jurgen Klopp stays at Liverpool for longer because I think he's the star of the show. If they get an Antonio Conte or if they get somebody like that who knows what they're doing and knows how to get the best money. Look at what Benitez has done this year with Everton. On 1.1, Demarai Gray and free transfer Andros Townsend.
Yeah, but that's all well and good. But Everton's expectation, let's be honest, their expectation is quite dampened down. Everton are not starting the season thinking top 4.
They're not, but that doesn't mean that it's not possible or plausible for them to get it. Do you know what I mean? I think the Newcastle fans will have an expectation, but I don't think it's going to go from from 0 to hero straight away.
I'm not worried about the fans' expectation. I'm worried about the owner's expectation.
No, I think the owner's got to know. Like, these are clever people. They're, they know it's not going to work that way. Or if they don't, they should, buy something else because. It's not going to work like that for me. I think there's a lot of players of that level you could buy and make really good signings out. Look at the boy. What did the boy Mendes sign for PSG for? He's about 25, 30 million. There's a third. You can go through this. Frank Kessie. What's he going to cost at the end of the season? 30 to 40?
You got to remember, a lot of these 30, 35 million pound players that are in there that are doing really well also have a structure of exceptional players around them to assist with that. You know what I mean? Like, if you take that boy at PSG, look at who he's surrounded by. That boy who played the other night for France, look at who he's surrounded by.
He is. But he's not surrounded.
You have to kind of try and bring that in as well to make.
Yeah, but he's not surrounded by that in Monaco. Do you know? They're a very bad average poor side. So he is a sort of a gem in that team, and that was my point earlier about cherry picking the best of teams.
Yeah, but what I'm saying to you is, if you buy him and you put him in with similar level players to Monaco, which might be in the region of 20 to 30 million, we don't know. If it goes in like that, you need to put that boy in there with the likes of a Griezmann, the likes of a, you have to put him in with those type of players as well to bring him on. As you said, when he plays at Monaco, everything looks bang average. When he goes into the French team, he's surrounded by quality. He looks world class. He
looks world class for Monaco, you see. That's what got him to the French squad. It wasn't the cart before the horse. He only got into the French squad because he looked standout. And I think there's enough standout players at football clubs for Newcastle to be able to say, we can be very strategic here. We can hand pick the best of what's look at the lad at in Cuckoo. Look at the lad in Cuckoo at Red Bull. How's he going to cost you? 30, 40 million?
But if you're going on a massive drive in terms of branding and marketing and bringing in all this other money, this other side of it that United did for years greatly, and other clubs have caught up now and are doing it and stuff like that, you have to have a bit of marquee in there as well, aren't you? Like, if you're sitting across a table, say from, let's say Porsche or Ferrari or Bugatti or whoever it is, a big brand, say Rolex or whatever it is, you know what I mean? You need to offer them a bit more than Dooku, don't you?
You do, but you're not offering them that. Like, again, we're talking January, and summertime I think will be different.
Yeah.
I think summertime, that's when the floodgates will open, but I still think even then, yes, I'm going to come for money, but I have to see it as a viable source of winning a trophy if I'm a player and the project. And I have to hear, we want Champions League next year. And that's when we really roll the dice, when we've got Champions League. And so I do think there's a little bit of building to be done, rather like, again, I just don't see the truck being backed up to the window and saying, right, listen, let's empty a load of 50 through this.
Some lad in the back with a shovel, just shoveling out.
Shoveling fucking green stuff into the bleeding windows of Mina Rayola's Jeep to say, take the money, you fat fuck. Fucking, I think Haaland will be their big go-to. I think that's what they'll try.
I have visions at the moment of football agents like Michael Owen going after he scores.
Yeah, I think Haaland for me is where they'll look at, because I think that's doable. Because I think it's doable at a level where 75 million next year, isn't it?
Not if this guy goes in for.
Well, that's what the buyout is, isn't it? So the buyout is 76 point something or whatever it is. So you're in at that, it's a massive statement. And that is very, very doable. That for me would be
massive.
That'd be massive. And that'd be a real moment where the rest of the league needs to go, fuck. Oh, fuck.
Yeah. Our friend behind you won't be grinning like the Joker out of Batman if something like that happens.
I have to be careful because my wife has just stepped into the room and she's listening, but this is like going into the showers in a changing room after a football match on a Sunday, and there's 10 of you standing there and one bloke walks in and everyone else leaves because I'm not standing near this bloke, this fucking tripod, so
what a way to describe it. Absolutely spot on. Brilliant.
Yeah. So that could be one of those moments. Like if we rock up next summer and we get Frank Kessie and we think, here we go, we're on the way, and Liverpool pick up, a fucking striker, and Liverpool boy Harry Kane, and they go, here we go, we're in for it. And then Newcastle rock up between them and just stick the glasses on and go, dagga dagga dun. It's fucking, and Erland takes the glasses off.
The helicopter lands in the middle of the stadium and the Rolling Stones are on stage, and now pops Haaland and Mbappe.
Fucking hell, man. Yeah. Jesus Christ.
Scary.
That's when they are big in the game.
Absolutely. Well, listen, it's been an absolute pleasure talking about this. This is the upper tier, of course. It's been longer than I thought it would be, but we had a lot to get through, and we got through it.
We had a little bit to get through, wouldn't we?
Yeah, absolutely. As always, drop your comments into the episode. You get it over there, Dynamo Podcast Network on YouTube, Facebook and Instagram, the upper tier, if you want to contact us, and on Twitter at _upper_tier.
And I just want to make it known clearly that I never had to leave the showers for that reason. I could always hang with anyone, so just throwing it out there.
That's the new name of the podcast now, Darren the Tripod. Oh, deadly. Until next time, my friend. Chat to you.
Take it easy, brother.
Take it easy.